Hey all. So second more of the season here. I actually recorded everything this time. And this is our war against XK9. Really solid alliance, so we knew we'd have to be on our best behavior. Starting out with two Killmonger fights. These are both good placements because Guardian can auto-block and iHulk on the next node punishes brute force. Very smart defense on that. Now, I've used Killmonger here before and against Guardian in general, and he's usually just a fantastic option. And High Ground doesn't really change that. Now, one thing I probably should have done is I should have idled around a little bit after my first heavy and combo so that I would have gotten rid of the first high ground charge, so I would have hit 10 on my combo immediately after that showed up, because then I would have spent this whole fight at 0 high ground charges instead of 1, pretty much all the time. Now, the other problem you're going to see here is that, and that's because after that previous L1, I tried to dash forward, and the game dashed back instead. So clearly, you know, either the input was weird or probably what happened is that my thumb just moved a little bit to the left before it moved to the right. I'm not blaming Kabam on that one, but it did surprise me enough that I missed the fact that I had lost True Strike. So, obviously a bit of a problem there, but thankfully we are able to get back on it. Killmonger has plenty of tankiness to deal with that kind of mistake, provided you only do it once. So yeah, not ideal, gotta watch for that kind of thing, but otherwise he's a hard counter. The True Strike not only gets around the auto block, but also lets him ignore the armor, so he's just doing reliably consistent damage, and it's super safe. iHulk I've taken... We might actually be up to dozens of times at this point. I've taken this node a lot. The healing he's getting off of Resonate is definitely not ideal, and I think one thing that I'm going to make a point of doing going forward, I don't like changing masteries often, but for wars when I'm not using Reed, and this one was one of those, I think I need to make a point of just turning it off, because it's fantastic for Reed, it's fantastic for a number of my attackers. Wasn't really helping here. You also may have noticed earlier, I believe there was a little bit there where I tried to punish a special one and the same thing happened where I dashed back instead of forward. But that whole resonate thing, you'll see I have done this fight before where I have gotten him down to 0 at like 12 gamma, so he doesn't even heal. He's already there and we just crossed the 50% mark, so willpower is definitely not doing me any favors, especially because I can't rely on despair to mitigate it because iHulk is immune to that. So definitely made this fight a little bit harder on myself and just a little bit slower, but really not the biggest problem because Killmonger is still such a fantastic counter for iHulk in general. We have just accepted at this point he is absolutely going to heal, and we're going to back the hell off when he does that. We have thankfully kept him to only a single Fury. You may have noticed several times throughout this fight where I intentionally parried and did nothing to gain a little bit of extra power, and that's why. And that's kept us in good enough shape that I can just eat a little bit of brute force damage and wait for a clean opening, and down he goes. Perfect. So we had originally assigned this Corvus to the player coming up path 3 with Doom, but I ended up taking it just because of timing reasons. The person taking path 1 was also taking the Power Snack Mini, and so I just wanted to clear them up so they could get through that, and then we could get our person to node 22. Now, I have said before, I do not consider myself the most proficient Doom player, but this has to be one of the easiest Doom fights on the entire map. Because there we go, like, even playing the Counter-Strike node intentionally and without giving him Furies, we easily got to our special 3. I mean, this is another good argument for Mystic Dispersion at 5 points instead of 3 or 4, as you sometimes see Doom run with. But yeah, it's hard to get easier than that. Then we go ahead and throw this. Nullifies his, what do you call it? His true damage. We hit into him again, nullify true damage again, nullify the armor, and then I think we nullify it one more time, and there we go. Special 2 with the Fury up, done. And you can see the Incinerates finish him off even before the Glaive comes back. So this Corvus wasn't duped, but even a duped one would have been dead there without us having to do anything. So my next fight was Airwalker on Ebb and Flow Intercept, as you can see. Now, Airwalker is high ground, so I'm going to have to watch for that, but I know that the main thing here is I'm just going to try and build my power with Doom, throw specials to power control him if I feel that he's getting out of hand, but I fully expect him to just be spamming special 1s, and when he does that, I just need to make sure to block it and not to eat it or dex it. So I have no idea what I did there. I think coming up, though, we have an actual different... yeah, there. I definitely blocked or something, but whatever. It didn't take. Doom is incredibly tanky. He gave me power. We got pushed to our special 3. We're good to go. And it actually might have done less damage than if I had blocked. Because you'll notice that the shock was still up at one point when the timer turned around. And when that happens, the next altitude charge comes twice as fast because shock is one of those debuffs that is punished by this. So Doom is taking a bit of damage there, a bit more than somebody else might, but he has so much block proficiency, so much tankiness, and I got the Intercept before this special 3, it just doesn't matter. We're doing an insane amount of damage. We're keeping him from throwing the more important specials, and down he goes. Now this next fight, I will admit, so I healed back up, I checked to see that my invulnerability boost is still running. I was a little bit worried about this fight, because as my BG mate, who normally takes it with Omega Red, Slay, says, this is sometimes called the Killmonger of Death. It has caused him a death, it has caused a number of other very good players in Top Alliance's deaths. It's a bit tricky. But what I was afraid of was just dying. I really thought that that was the only real problem, but you're going to see another issue here, because, see right there, not only did I trigger an armor break, which is nice, I was playing around the reverb because I knew that reverb would come right back as soon as the armor break was purified by Mighty Charge, so that didn't surprise me. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm running Resonate, and so I already had one weakness. So far I've actually been extremely lucky with it, which is probably why the fight feels so great this far. But I should not have been running it. Or at least I should have taken into account that by running it, I was giving him a ton of willpower healing. During that special 3 was the first time I actually looked at his power or his health bar, and I noticed it was almost full, and I went, uh-oh. But I figured if I could just get an Intercept, then I would be fine. I still hadn't clocked the Resonate thing, because I had not actually fought a Killmonger since unlocking this mastery, and so it was just not at the forefront of my mind. It didn't occur to me at all that the problem with this fight might be damage. If it had, then I definitely would have turned off Resonate and use Mystic Power back boosts. I think either of those would have made a huge difference, because then that big special 2 makes a big difference. Any special 3s I throw make a big difference, and I would have been fine. Now, I'm also messing up these heavy evades at the corner. I did practice those because that's one of the things you have to watch for with Killmonger, but I just wasn't getting them, and I think it was because I was a bit flustered by how much baiting I was having to do, and by the fact that I was starting to realize I wasn't doing enough damage. And again, up until this point, we still are pretty much on track. Like, I can solo this from this point out if we do it properly, but it's close. We're at 230 and at 50%. And remember that I had actually mentioned we've been lucky with Resonate not proccing much so far. That changes in the last half of this. And again, if I had had Mystic Power back on, then getting that Intercept and then throwing that Special 3 would have gotten me right back up here pretty much without having to worry about much else. This fight would be a lot closer to over. See, there we go. There's that weakness, which gives him more power. He is at least throwing it here, so I'm not getting as backed up. But there's Reverb. There's another Resonate, so even more power. And there's another. See, this is where it starts getting out of control, because the willpower and the power gain together just become a problem. But as I said, even that would have been okay if I had been more worried about even the distant possibility of a timeout. I would have thrown on big Mystic boosts, and instead of having no power after that Special 3, I would have had probably about a bar. So yeah, mistakes were made here. Like I said, I was too focused on not dying and not nearly focused enough on killing him or on his interaction with Resonate, which is something that I know about intellectually, but because the mastery is still new to me, just did not occur to me. So as you've probably guessed by this point, I do end up timing out on this fight. We only have a minute left and 20%, so at that point, this would be possible if I was able to build up to another big Special 3 and throw it with that Fury, but everything has to go perfectly. And proccing that weakness again does not count as things going perfectly, because he just has so much power. And there's the problem that I didn't fully clock. I was like, okay, I just need to throw this Special 3. But he had just thrown his Special 2. And it probably would have been a Special 1 if not for Resonate giving him that extra power. But because he threw it, he was indestructible for that last Special 3. And there's no way I'm getting through that last 10% in 10 seconds. So this was a painful one. Completely avoidable. I was surprised when that timeout came up, because I was just focused on hitting into him and I had stopped watching the clock, which is good. I don't think that you should, panic about the clock. The important thing is to just keep closing out the fight, which was what I was going for, but yeah. You'll see me close it out here, but I don't think I'm going to say anything more on this. It's just, if I end up taking this fight in the future, or for anyone else who does take this fight, Mystic Power back boosts, Mystic Special boosts, don't run Resonate against Killmonger. Yeah, see how much damage, or how much power he got back from both the shock and the weakness? This one was completely winnable. And then I don't know what that was. I definitely could have played Doom better here as well, but, sometimes fights don't go perfectly, and I don't want to blame this on that, when the reality is that playing this exactly the way I did, with the 2 changes I've mentioned, this would have been a messy solo instead of a messy timeout. Hope that helps other people avoid the same mistake in the future, but let's move on to this MODOK. So I have taken MODOK here on Polka Dot Power, Stunning Reflection, many times with Killmonger, but I have not done it before with High Ground. So you'll see me throwing on that regen boost. I wasn't worried about this fight per se. I did my duels to make sure I didn't end up blocking a Special 1 while he had multiple altitude charges or something like that. But I just wasn't sure how it would go, because I figured he'd probably have an altitude charge the whole time, and my usual strategy for this node does rely on blocking with counterpunch to get openings. And every time I do that, I'm going to take a little bit of damage because of those altitude charges, unless I can somehow manage to keep them down through my combo. And you'll see that I am controlling them. Like, he was at 1 when I finally got True Strike up, and he pretty much stays at 1. But that was exactly the problem I was worried about, that in that opening section of the fight, where I was pushing him to his special 1 and working to get True Strike up, that he would get a charge I would just never get rid of. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm taking a bit of extra damage, but, you know, I'm boosted appropriately. Killmonger is tanky and has a decently high health pool. We are easily winning the HP race. This fight is still safe. Killmonger is still absolutely one of the best counters here. He's just not going to come out of it at like 95% like he used to. As you can see, we're at 85 with a bit left. High ground does punish. But as I've said to some people before, this is actually one of the reasons why high ground almost bothers me more in its nerfed state than in its original, because this level of damage isn't likely to kill you if the matchup was a good one in the first place. But what it does do is soak up your potions afterwards. And so that makes war more expensive. Thankfully, Kabam is giving us compensation right now, but pretty sure that compensation is intended to be because the game is having some issues with inputs right now, rather than, hey, here's some compensation for the global defense tactic we just incorporated. But enough said on that. So, not feeling great about that timeout. That's an attack bonus lost in each of my first 2 wars. I'm going to try and hold myself there for the season and turn this around, but at least the rest of the fights went quite well, and it is always fun to use Killmonger. So going forward with some lessons learned about my mastery setups and the dangers of it, hope this was interesting for y'all, and I will catch y'all next time. Take care.